This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. Now, here's your host, Kevin Prewett.
This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, and our guest today is a versatile entrepreneur, finance expert, and podcast host. He founded successful tech fitness ventures and raised $325 million for his first hedge fund by the age of 25. He co-developed Allen, an AI-driven SaaS platform, alongside Alexi and Leila Hormozi, achieving remarkable growth from 0 to 20 million ARR in 6 months. He currently helps make founders' dreams come true by implementing his product to profit framework as a sought-after number 2 to ambitious founders. Join me in welcoming Tim Calise to the Marketing Umbrella Podcast. Tim, thanks again for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
I was kind of getting everything ready before I got on Zoom, and I was thinking, sometimes the shortest bios are the people that have done the most, and the longest bios are the people that have probably done the least. So I looked at your bio and I thought, that is a very short bio for guests that we have on this podcast. And I know that he has had a long history in his relatively short life of things that he's done. So round this out a little bit for us. Mention some things that we didn't know about. Talk about family, where you're from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in New York, on the North Shore of Long Island. My father was in the investment business, so professional services. But I recognized very early in my life that I was kind of wired a little bit differently. Everything I saw around me was a problem to be solved, and I had this burning desire to kind of take on these hard roads of figuring things out. And I think that theme has carried with me all the way through. So when I was in college, I founded 2 companies while I was in college, one my sophomore year, one my junior year. One was a late night snack delivery business. The other one was a textbook exchange program. Both of those taught me lots of great lessons. And then I moved into the kind of entrepreneurial version of finance, which was the hedge fund industry in the early 2000s. And that's where it was the Wild West. It's where all the kind of growth was. And from the age of 23 to 25, I raised over $325 million from investors around the world. And then shut that down December of 2007, right before the big stock market
That's a good
crash.
move there. That's
shut
right.
that company down and gave all the money back. And then one theme has been when I switch chapters, it's like in a very abrupt leave one world behind and move into another. And so I left the finance world, went into fitness and technology. And that led me a couple of years ago to being introduced to Alex and Leila Hormozi, who now run a company called acquisition.com. And I was part of the executive team there. Company was sold 2 years ago. And now I'm kind of dedicated my time to helping the next round of entrepreneurs, hopefully learn some lessons that I've learned along the way to realize their dreams, hopefully with in a shorter amount of time, with less bumps and bruises along the way.
I love that. Let me ask you, this is kind of out of left field on this question right here, because as you were kind of laying the groundwork and kind of that serpentine journey that you've kind of been on to get to this point. So we've had a few other guests that have had successful exits. They have, life-changing money, that they've made in a relatively short period of time. How would you say, on the backside of those, kind of abrupt, changes or improvements or upgrades or whatever you want to call it, we have to fly in business class and first class. So tell me how that changed you and how it changed how you approach business, how you approach life.
Yeah, so every one of these chapters has kind of come with lessons, but I've kind of left each chapter really being the same person. Though along the way, there's this regression. And what that means for me is every time I kind of get too far ahead of myself or too far below this line, everything kind of trends towards this why, if I'm chasing a financial opportunity, usually it doesn't work out very well. And the reason is I know the authenticity of it's about the work, it's not about the outcome.
Yep.
And so I think as I've evolved as a person, these events, if you kind of stack them up, in the early part of my life, it was in my early 20s, it was let's go make some money. And then after that, it was like, all right, kind of, I have enough to be comfortable. My basic needs are covered. What do I actually want to do? And then I moved into fitness and technology because that was of interest to me. And now I'm in a phase of my life where, I could go work at an investment bank if I wanted to, but I'm a father of three, and I simply just don't subscribe to the hustle and grind approach. Yes, there are seasons in life, and we can go through all those analogies, but I fundamentally was changed a couple of years ago when I was introduced to someone who makes $12 million a year working 4 hours a week. And that broke something in me, which was like, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. It's not a question of whether it's possible. It's a question of what needs to be true for that to be possible.
Yeah.
And I needed that reminder because I was starting to go down the path of, 80-hour weeks again. And it was just not the right decision, but it's like the siren song, if you will, of, if you do more, you'll get more. And I've just learned that lesson and been served that lesson multiple times along the way.
And I think, I've never been faced with that eventuality, but I do think that there's a point where you would think, enough is enough. I mean, another 10 million doesn't move the needle, in my life type thing. So how do you figure out, what is the cost of freedom? What is the cost of lifestyle, that you want to achieve? But it sounded very much like an advertisement.
I learned this lesson in my hedge fund world. I mean, when you're looking at a screen, and just very basic primer of how this world works, if we had $100 million from our investors, banks like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and others would lend us more money to invest.
Yeah.
So if we had $100 million of capital, we could invest $400, $500, $600 million in some. So just imagine it at 24, I looked at a screen and said, if you wanted to, you could go spend $1 billion right now. If you internalize what that number means, you will be petrified all day long. It can't be a financial number. It just has to be a number. And I mean that from the standpoint of that conditioned me to look at money from the standpoint. And again, all of my basic needs were covered. I wasn't chasing, ever bigger dollars. It's the scoreboard that kind of exists.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh, I need another 10 million so I can go do this thing. It's like, I just want to see the number continue to grow, and I'm battling, I'm kind of competing against myself yesterday. Right. And I think the most successful people have always been committed to the process. The number is just the scorecard. It's the process, not the goal.
Right.
So the journey, not the destination, whatever analogy you want to use. And I just love the idea of being an entrepreneur. I love the idea of working with ideas. I love the idea of working with people who see the world in a certain way. Right. So I think I'm addicted to that, and it has some kind of outcomes that usually go along to that process.
And it's interesting because you probably, and I'm not playing your shrink here, but I think you would also have to battle. It's not just the hustle and grind culture. It's the internal drive that you have that says, I want to win at this game. There's an athletic metaphor, here that's at play that says I may be competing against myself. It's kind of like even fitness goals. I'm competing against who I was yesterday. So I love the however many entrepreneurs we have on this show, at different times, that the idea of when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you are constantly seeing opportunity, in front of you, and everything is like a challenge to figure out how to do it better, how to make it better, how to improve the process. Walk us through just really quickly, kind of what are you talked a little bit about, up to the kind of the hedge fund side of things, but post that, what did it look like when on the backside of that? What did it look like when you stepped into, kind of the fitness space? What are some, like real early learnings, in that journey that you kind of look back and you think these have really kind of paid dividends over the years?
Yeah, something you said just a second ago dovetails into that really nicely for me, which is in my early years, I can remember thinking and it wasn't necessarily a scarcity mindset, but it was a, you know, yes, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And it was feeling fearful around not having either enough opportunities to choose from or the right opportunities to choose from. I distinctly remember that feeling like I had to kind of chase those opportunities when they came out of fear. Fast forward to today, yes, everything, I do feel I'm a hammer in that analogy, and everything could be a nail. But my thinking has gone from not being fearful of volume, it's fearful of overcommitment. So I think the pendulum has kind of swung the other way. And so now, instead of thinking about is an outcome possible with an opportunity, is the outcome that I need, number one, it's bigger than it was in the beginning part of my career, but is it probable? And the reason why that's important is I learned this lesson post hedge fund, huge leverage opportunity, great money, the whole 9 yards. And I moved into brick and mortar fitness. And I spent almost a decade there. And in hindsight, I entered that opportunity thinking, is it possible I can make this work? And in reality, the outcome that I got was not probable, and it was significantly smaller than I should have been thinking about. So I went from big opportunities, setting a high standard, setting a lofty goal, to kind of playing it safe. And I think I fell prey to proving to myself that I could do something difficult. And the learning was sometimes the easy path is the right one to choose, because you don't always have to prove to yourself that you're the gladiator. So now if you think of this kind of like, how do I think about the world now? My buy box, like the conditions under which I want to get involved is it something that actually feels easy for me, but is valuable to someone else? And is the opportunity big? Because I have, Mark Cuban is notorious for this, thinking about, time is your most precious asset and things like that. Now I actually believe it. I didn't understand it a decade ago. So now if I'm going to dedicate my time to something, it's got to be a really big opportunity. And it's because I'm now saying no a lot and whittling it down to like, not everything has to be climbing the proverbial mountain, bleeding along the way. There are some things that I'm really uniquely skilled to do, which can be aligned with a big opportunity. Just means that I might only get, 2 or 3 at bats a year rather than, swinging it at every opportunity that comes my way.
Right.
And so that's a lesson that I would teach anybody is like, set the high standard, maintain the standard, because you'll end up swinging at pitches that you shouldn't otherwise.
You said something really interesting about, don't look at the possible, look at the probable, but, and then you said, I choose the opportunities that I find easy that would be helpful, to someone else. How do you balance the idea of it being easy for you with the inherent challenge that you love to kind of take on as the way, you've been wired? Those almost seem like antithetical, a little bit. So.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're raised in this idea of, I'll say, I had the perspective when I was growing up that the most successful people are the ones who can voluntarily accept and withstand pressure. Pressure, it's the gladiator mentality. And I think now I just feel differently about it. I feel that I am doubling down on my strengths. I now view business more of a collaborative effort rather than you need to be the smartest guy in the room. I just need to be really good at what I bring to the table. I happen to have discovered through a lot of self-reflection and probably life serving me the questions and lessons along the way to be much more narrow in my thinking. I don't have to be an expert in everything. I have fallen into, and I think to a great benefit, I'm a generalist, which means I can look at the entire business and understand how decisions impact everything, but I'm really good at a couple of things.
Yeah.
And product is one, positioning is one. I'm not the best marketer in the world, but I know what product market fit looks like.
Right.
And I know how to get there. I have folks in my network who, if I need to run funnels, I can go to them. If I want to write copy, I have other people. I just spent a lot of years trying to get really good at everything, and it felt really hard. So number one. Number two, I no longer rely on the business to fuel those parts of me inside to feel successful. And for a very long time, I was filling those gaps with, I need to go get, put up a win on the board. You know what I mean? To feel good about myself, and not to get kind of too far down that road. But I think that's very common, which is, we look to outside things to fill those gaps. Now it's like, I'm willing to take the easy path and feel really valuable and really good. And the last thing I'll say is, I also realized that I thrive in chaos. And when things get too smooth, I am really good at, undermining myself in those situations. And when you see that pattern, you have to start to recognize that, like, it's okay sometimes to be a smooth water sailor rather than, turning the boat and heading to a hurricane just to
there you go
to prove it to yourself that you can survive out the other side.
How good is my boat? I'm going to test it again. That's right.
Yep. Yeah.
It is
exactly right.
I mean, the realization that one realization I think you've come to is just the idea that, my identity is not just tied up in the wins and losses in my business. That life's bigger than that. It's more comprehensive than that. But I would love to know, like, what does a typical day look like? Are you just bombarded with opportunities? People just know who you are, know you're in the space, your network. I mean, are people just saying, "Hey, Tim, you got 15 minutes, grab a cup of coffee. I want to bounce an idea off of you."
Yeah. My day is actually very low key. I used to have the packed calendar. And so now I wake up, I get my kids off to school, and I've segmented my week so that I typically run a 4-day work week. It's now more like a 3.5-day work week.
You're aiming to a 4-hour work week, right?
Yeah, well, for me, I realized I had to set time aside where I didn't have meetings, so I could be more creative. I naturally like to be busy, and therefore I kind of didn't set time aside for myself to be creative. So now I've done a better job at that. But even in your intro, you said something which is exactly right, which is I'm kind of the number 2 guy. I've been the number 2 guy now multiple times in a couple of instances. So I missed the boat personally on the personal branding idea, social media, so I'm starting late to that game. So I am not bombarded from the standpoint of, I've been kind of relatively unknown out in the marketplace. And in the beginning of this kind of last couple of year initiative, I tried to kind of put the personal brand more front and center, trying to be something for everyone. And now I've changed course a little bit. I have focused much more on, joint ventures and partnerships and creating this kind of very tight knit collaborative community, and being known in that for who I am, how I see the world, not the traditional niching down of, I help plumbers between $700,000 and $750,000 a year, get more clients. That's just not I want to have a highly leveraged life in a collaborative environment. And if that's for you, then we're probably going to get along very, very well.
And I'm assuming you also are pretty selective on who you work with at this stage too. Because you don't have to work with anybody. I mean, it is like, do I want to, engage with this individual or this company or whatever over the next few years or months or years. But talk about working with Alex Hormozi. He is, if there's anybody ubiquitously on social media right now, I mean, he has got to be in the top 3, of people that I see on the socials right now. So talk about, and he and Leila as well, talk about that engagement and, how you guys interacted and how you even came to this opportunity.
Yeah. So it's these funny kind of times in life where I exited the hedge fund business, got into fitness and technology, was part of a franchise. And then in 2018, I believe it was, I became a client of Gym Launch, which was Alex and Leila's initial company. And we had a sister company called Prestige Labs, which is a supplement business. And they had a sales challenge in January, I think it was 2018. And I was one of the top 10 salespeople in the country that we sold into our gyms. And so we want a trip to meet them, or I want a trip to meet them. And we're all sitting around literally at their dining table at their house, in their house in Austin, Texas. And everybody's going around. It was kind of an impromptu consulting day, effectively. And everyone's saying, how do I market better? How do I, hire more coaches, that kind of stuff. And then it came to me, and Alex looked at me and said, dude, you're in the wrong opportunity vehicle. You should sell your gyms and go do something else. You are far too smart to be doing this. And I'm like, I appreciate the kind words, but it actually struck me like I needed permission to kind of move on to the next phase. And so I ended up effectively selling off my gyms. And Alex called me a couple of months later with a business problem. We had exchanged numbers. And he said, this is what I think I'm going to do. What do you think? And I remember my first words to him were, do you want me to tell you that you're right? Or do you want me to tell you what I would do? And he's like, I want you to tell me what you would do. And I said, I think you have it all wrong. You should do this, this, and this. 2 months later, he was hiring, basically executives to help him run that business. It was a rocket ship. And so it was Alex, Leila, myself, and our CFO as the main people at the company. I ran Prestige Labs for a couple of months, and then I ran Allen, which was our technology business. Alex is probably the smartest person I have ever met, mixed with the most clear on exactly who he is and how he sees the world. And I admire his ability to build a very strong wall around those components of him. He doesn't care about the outside world, their opinion. He knows exactly who he is and what he's trying to do. And conventional wisdom be damned. And I have a lot of appreciation for that. So it was a phenomenal opportunity. We still keep in touch, and in some of those early videos, it's him with a little small American flag in the corner with a whiteboard behind him. That was that. I ended up moving to Austin and living effectively next door to him. So I was in and around that time. It felt like the early parts of Facebook or probably Tesla or some of these companies. But it was a phenomenal experience, and one that I'll take and cherish for quite a long time.
I imagine that if I was interviewing him and asking him about that time, he'd probably say, yeah, this guy told me what I didn't want what I wanted to hear. He told me what I needed to hear. And, he
appreciated that. He was clearly a strong personality.
Yes.
So,
I mean, just look at the way that, he dresses like on videos. You're thinking, dude, you really don't care. That is like, this is who I am, kind of take it or leave it. But I love to kind of look at, just entrepreneurs as a whole, like, what makes them tick. And the whole idea, I've kind of this theory about, that they have a genetic disposition. There's kind of DNA built into, them, they're wired a unique way, but it doesn't sound like to me that it really matters what the product is that you are dealing with. I mean, you may want to be involved, you may want to have an interest in it, but you've been in some different spaces, for sure. And you continue to be. So what kind of catches your eye, so to speak?
Yeah. So the through line for me, and you're absolutely right, it kind of has gone across different industries, but the through line is, I believe, and this is deeply rooted in me because I can remember from an early age, I cared deeply about people. Number one. Number two, I was always very comfortable with people kind of older than I was or more advanced than I was or a couple steps ahead. I was the younger, the kid growing up who was more comfortable with adults than peers. And so the through line for me is I seek out opportunities that are rooted in a relationship-based approach to the business. For example, that means memberships, subscriptions, recurring revenue opportunities.
Right.
Because I really love the idea of creating an opportunity to solve a problem today, earn the trust of that customer, and then find other problems to solve in the future for that person. I am not and I don't like high capital intensity businesses. I don't know anything about biotech. I don't know anything about manufacturing, things like that. So although it's kind of services has been my sweet spot, specifically around recurring revenue. And most of the opportunities that folks that I work with right now are either people who don't have recurring revenue, but should, and I can implement that kind of process with some experience. Or their business is, I'm a big car guy. I'm a big Formula One fan. So just bear with me for a second. Everybody talks about business in terms of like the size of the engine. You know, I'm firing on all cylinders. I'm putting the pedal to the metal. I think it misses the mark, because what actually matters is how much power makes it to the wheels. So I act as the transmission, and I find opportunities where the engine is almost overheating because it's so pedal to the metal and things are moving so quickly, but it is so inefficient that like the car is almost just, you know, kind of in neutral. So if I can take all of that energy and, you know, kind of direct it in the right way with some key changes, usually it's simplicity and clarity, then we get more power to the wheels. And those are the things that I like, because those opportunities, kind of to my heart, is where the entrepreneur is like, I'm doing everything I can think of. I'm putting more money, more time, more effort, more people, and it's just not working. And I know what that feels like. And so I like to, my kind of like moral payoff is, it's the breath of fresh air to say, you actually don't need to just do more, you need to do different. And let me give you decades of experience, and I can consolidate it into probably minutes or hours or days.
You said something really interesting just a second ago about the idea that, you know, this is kind of, you said, this is my through line. And so speak to our audience, just directly to them there. So just assume that they are, you know, marketing agency owners, they are professional services owners, you know, started businesses in that space. Talk about how they could, you know, reassess, pivot, just aim at kind of the things that you see as important and profitable, you know, based on your through line that says, you know, hey, what is this recurring revenue? What is this subscription base? What is this, you know, what are some ways that they could look at their own companies, you know, kind of in with that framework?
Yeah, so I actually have a framework around this, which as we get to the end, I'll give you a way I'd love to provide that to you. And I call it the product expansion formula. And the idea is, there are only 6 things that we can offer to a potential customer. 3 of them are physical and 3 of them are digital. And it's effectively a product, a service, or access. So the way I think about this is, let's map the existing business into one of those 6 buckets, or across those 6 buckets. And so the next thing we want to do is to say, a well-performing company can actually span all 6 of those. So if you're in, I work with folks in home services as an example. And the basic example of this would be, a physical product would be, I'm going to put in a new hot water heater. Physical service would be, I'm going to come in on a recurring basis and do a tune-up or something like that. A physical access could be, I'm going to pay a retainer to get 1 hour service if I ever need to, or a Q&A, or access to an expert or something like that. The digital version, the digital product, could be, here's an ebook or a framework on how to improve my efficiency of my hot water heater. Here are 5 tips on how to get more hot water faster. Your digital service could be, you know, we're going to have a mastermind around homeowners and how to reduce your expenses. And digital access could be, we have a Facebook group for homeowners in our area to ask questions and something like that. Whatever the things are, that's probably a very rudimentary example. But we had a mattress store who was a client of ours, and they said, you know, we sell mattresses. It's like, I'm just going here because it's kind of farther afield.
Right.
Most mattress stores don't think recurring revenue and service and things like that. We sell mattresses. You actually don't sell mattresses. What you sell is better sleep.
That's exactly right.
So physical products are mattresses, pillows, sheets, et cetera, et cetera. But what recurring revenue can we build in? we'll come in and we'll do the kind of vacuum and refresh your mattress every year because all the things that build up and things like that. We'll flip and turn your mattress way back when that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
We also need consumables. Might be a spray that we're going to use to make sure that you get better sleep. Might be the knee pillow. It might be you kind of get your mind thinking about, well, what problem am I ultimately solving? I think we very much sit in the kind of the immediate thing in front of us.
Yep.
If you widen your lens a little bit, you can actually see that there's lots of opportunities. And when somebody knows, likes, and trusts you, they're much more open for you to be, we call it kind of how many wallets can I be involved in? How many budgets can I be involved in? And in the fitness world, it was, gym memberships versus accountability coaching versus nutritional guidance to say. Those are 3 different wallets, but I can be the provider of all 3. You wouldn't say I'm not going to join the gym because I need to eat tomorrow.
Right.
They're 2 different budgets.
Right.
And so I try to have as many budgets as possible with each client.
I think you missed a service related to the mattress place. You got to have somebody to come in and reattach tags that consumers illegally remove.
Exactly right.
Under penalty of law if you remove this tag. So that is, I do want to circle back and make sure we include a link to that framework because I think that would be so important to our listeners. But we touched on a lot of things. Why Formula One? You're a Yank. I mean, you're American. Why in the world would you be so connected to Formula One?
So number one, I think it's because it's probably the glitz and the glamour of it early on appealed to me. But as I've learned more and more about it, it's like a technology. I've always loved cars. It's like the best technology that we have today most of it came from Formula One. The money's big, the people are big, the races are big. It's obviously taken on a life of its own kind of in recent years. But there's something about going incredibly fast and the cornering that a Formula One car can do. As I relate it to my life, it's a lot of car racing is like straight line stuff. A Formula One car can turn on a dime.
Yeah.
And I think there's something in me that has identified it identifies with this idea of going straight ahead, hard brake, right turn, back on the gas again.
Yeah.
That's kind of how you drive a car like that. And I think it actually resonates a lot with me around kind of how I've lived my life, which is straight ahead, full send. And then when we're reaching the corner, full brake, turn, make a change, and then get back on the gas again. And that doesn't I don't underappreciate the parallels the parallels there for me.
I do think that Formula One is the very best at getting the power to the wheels. To use your analogy that you had earlier. But we're going to shift right now. This is one of my favorite parts of the interview is our chat is our rapid fire round, disparate questions, and just answer the first thing that comes to mind. So did you get along with your parents growing up?
Yes.
Do you have siblings?
Yes.
Do you have a pet or pets?
I have two golden doodles. Both. I've named my dogs after famous people in racing. So I had Enzo for Enzo Ferrari, and now I have Dino for who was Enzo's son. So both named after Ferraris.
Probably a Schumacher fan somewhere back in the day too. So,
somewhere. That's right.
Kids.
I have 3, all kind of in the younger teenage years, 2 girls and a boy.
I mean, that's a startup in itself, having 3 teenagers in the house, that's for sure. What time do you wake up in the morning?
Typically 5 plus or minus.
And go to bed at what time
5
generally?
10.
Ideal vacation spot outside of Monaco for the Formula One race? Anywhere in the world.
Great question.
Not an object.
Right now, my favorite place is probably Italy.
So how does faith interface with how you do business?
For me, it's funny, kind of, we're recording this in January, so we just went through all the Christmas movies and things like that. And one of my kids' favorite movies, the line is effectively, believing is seeing, not seeing is believing. And I think so much of being in business for yourself, or even just envisioning your life, you have to almost take action before you see the results. And that really resonates with me. So it is around belief in myself, belief in something that the future can be brighter than the present or the past. And that it's giving me shivers right now, just even thinking about it. Like, everything that has ever happened in my life has come with an invisible hand. Label that however you will. But I have a belief that there is something bigger than myself. And I think just as a human, it's a healthy thing to live outside yourself, holistically.
If you were king for a day, what is one thing you would change about the marketing climate?
That there's an authenticity score around capability and experience to separate those. Use the analogy of, like, I would have the tide go out so you could see who's wearing a bathing suit.
That I love that. That is a great analogy. That is I'm gonna remember that one in future interviews. I'm gonna say we're gonna let the tide go out, find out who's wearing bathing suits. Anything that we haven't touched on, you just like to close us up with today? A special project you're working on, book you've released, anything related in that space, and then please remind me what that link is for your framework.
Yeah. So what I'm working on right now is what I call the co-creator community. It is a low ticket hybrid one-on-one group. So if you are the type of person, entrepreneurial isolation and confusion is the number one problem I solve. So if you are sitting out there going, I really wish I needed like a mentor or some insights, this is a great way. We meet about once a week. I'm teaching something that I get from my one-on-one clients. I share that out to the community. But you also have the ability to ask questions and get access to me along the way. So it is something I'm really passionate about. I did one-on-one consulting and investing almost all the way through the end of last year. And this group is now launching in January 2024. So that's a way for me to continue to give back to folks that may not be a one-on-one client, but I'd love to have you as a part of that for being a listener today. And the way to get that framework is to go to Instagram, tim.calise, and DM me the word umbrella, UMBRELLA, and I will give you I want to give that framework to you, that product expansion formula, and then happy to answer any other questions that you have, and would love to have you as part of that community as well if it fits.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Tim, thank you so much just for taking time. And I've loved the chat. It's been really interesting. I have really struggled with trying to frame questions because I could chase so many different directions. I'm thinking, okay, I got to remember who our audience is that we're speaking to, because I mean, it was just me listening, sitting in your office, just listening to you share your experiences. But it has really been insightful, and I know our listeners would enjoy this episode for sure. But just thanks again for taking your time and just helping marketing agency owners grow and scale their business with Umbrella. Thanks again, Tim. Have a great day.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. To learn more, go to umbrellaus.com.